Well, now computers may be involved in these crimes. Perry Peltz has more in her special report, Software, Hard Porn. Perry?
Chuck, yesterday we showed you how children can access pornography on a computer bulletin board. These computer bulletin boards are the electronic equivalent of any board where messages and pictures can be exchanged. They're part of a new communication system that, for the most part, serve a useful and legitimate purpose. But these bulletin boards have also been misused by pedophiles to stalk the children they want to sexually abuse.
How many boys you killed today? 5 or 6.
This home video was taped by a man acting out a fantasy with his roommate of sexually abusing and torturing a child, then killing him and making a so-called snuff film. It was a ghastly rehearsal for the real thing that Daniel Depew planned later with accomplice Dean Lamry. They met on a computer bulletin board that pedophiles used to get in touch with each other.
I know there's a couple of kids floating around down there.
2 California police officers dialed into the board, posing as pedophiles themselves. They arranged a meeting and were able to secretly record the unspeakable plans that were being made.
Well, I want to watch his eyes all the time, and I want to watch his eyes talk out of his head, and I want to make him jump.
Those men are serving long prison sentences, as is a Massachusetts man who used a bulletin board to meet a young boy and lure him into a meeting.
The child tripped and the defendant caught up to him and dragged him into a ditch, and the defendant removed the child's clothing, orally raping the child.
Law enforcement officials are well aware of this use of computers, and they say it certainly isn't making their job of stopping pedophilia any easier. A New York City police detective whose face cannot be shown because he works undercover in the Moral Squad caught a pedophile who met young boys through the computer.
John Keeley had his own computer bulletin board that he called Sanctuary, and he would communicate with these boys through this computer bulletin board. He befriended a 14 or 15-year-old boy who was living in Las Vegas, and he had the boy come to Brooklyn, New York, where he lived, and he eventually had sex with this young boy.
Pedophiles are just a phone call away from each other and their victims. Where they live doesn't matter, and they're almost impossible to catch, as this man knew when he boasted on a bulletin board. Pedophiles are not only protected by anonymity, some of them are protected by the law.
It's very difficult with the way that the laws are written these days. If you're not acting out in a sexual way, or if you're not selling child pornography through the bulletin board, there's really not that much that we can do.
Tomorrow at 11, why authorities can't do more to stop this terrifying use of computers, and what parents should know to protect their children. Sue, Chuck?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Porn has shown how computers are being used to show X-rated material and to find children for sexual abusers. Perry Peltz has some advice now for parents, and you may not want your children to see this report. Perry?
Well, Chuck, computer bulletin boards, the electronic equivalent of any boards that carry messages and pictures, are a useful means of communication. Mostly their uses are legitimate and productive, but not always. Their messages and pictures are available to anyone, including children.
Most parents don't realize that this kind of X-rated material is available on many computer bulletin boards. They may not know it, but the children do. Why is this pornographic material so accessible to children? Why is this allowed? What may seem like an easy answer is not easy at all. Margie Hines, New York Civil Liberties Union.
The Supreme Court has said accurately that information and entertainment about sex, sexuality, sexual response is important, and it's protected by the First Amendment. It's very dangerous to give government the power to control what anybody, including children, has access to, because the standards are so subjective.
Bulletin board owners can, and some do, require proof of age before they'll allow access to pornography. Or they can scramble the picture and require a key that they won't provide to children. But policing bulletin boards with hundreds of items is very difficult.
Myself and other bulletin board owners simply can't look through 15,000 pages of information every day.
Is there any way to, in fact, prevent children from accessing pornographic materials in their computers?
Parents have the responsibility to monitor and supervise what their kids are doing.
But more disturbing than children looking at pictures, pedophiles looking for children to sexually abuse and sometimes kill stalk children through computers.
I'd be more than happy to walk back in the room for the 10 or 15 minutes that actually takes you to snuff.
Those criminals were caught because police tapped into their bulletin board. Going undercover, they met with the criminals and secretly taped their horrible plans.
I want to make you jump, and I want to make you struggle. And
If law enforcement people know about these bulletin boards, why don't they monitor them regularly and find these pedophiles?
And when it comes to private electronic mail, there is a federal law, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, that requires them to have a search warrant before they can read anybody's electronic mail.
A New York City detective whose face cannot be shown because he works undercover in the moral squad.
Well, it's very difficult with the way that the laws are written these days. We just hope that the parents will try to educate their children and speak to them and tell them to be aware of certain people that may be asking them very personal questions.
Children should be warned about key questions that pedophiles might ask in a computer. Sometimes they pose as children themselves. Sue, Chuck?
Very, thank you.